Welcome to Access Your Leadership, where we share inspiring career stories and talk about ways you can level up your own leadership potential. I'm your host and coach, Hakeem Lakhdar, and today I'm here with Laura Sauter. Laura is a speaker and fractional CMO and the owner and senior brand strategist with Agency Bel, a boutique agency that develops identities and visual elements for print and digital communications focused on conscientious organization with a strong sense of corporate responsibility. Laura, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to be with you. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad we could make this happen. So as we think about this conversation, before we get into it, I'd love to hear from you. What's a leadership win that you're celebrating of self or of others, professional or personal?
I'm actually going to talk about a great call I got last week for my client. 4 years ago-ish, I was approached by a business owner who'd been in business about 15, 20 years by that point. And he said, I'm 60, mid 60s. I want to sell my business. And do you think I need to do a brand refresh to make it more profitable to sell? And I said, absolutely, you should. And we did the work, and I know it was laborious for him and somewhat stressful, but he just called me last week and said that a bigger fish in his industry is buying him for numbers that he couldn't even imagine. So he spent the time and the money to do that brand refresh. And this gentleman is literally going to get a Cape House and prepare to do the retirement thing and start to exit his business with a profit that he just couldn't even imagine. So to me, that is a leadership win for me, but it's a leadership win for him. And I'm so very proud. And it's just a testimony to the type of work that I do, that you don't always see the results in minutes. It might take years, but you will see the results.
Oh my gosh, I want to put that on repeat over and over again. You might not see the results in minutes, but you will see the results at some point in time. And you're so right. I mean, I can relate to that, as you can imagine, in the work that I do. I think a lot of people have this desire for instant gratification, right? I mean, they're investing time, they're investing a significant amount of money into themselves or their business. And there's this expectation that, okay, well, I want to see this result in this session, or I want to see the results when I hit to go live or to publish or whatever it might be that you're working with them on. And I think the win that you're sharing is one that we all aspire to have, which is to put that work in on the front end, to invest in ourselves, time, money, effort, and then to see it pay off, quite literally in this case, in the end.
I am so happy and proud. And people come to me, what is the ROI? And I think in today's world, where you can see the impressions of a post, you can see the likes, you can see the comments, the type of work that I do and the type of work that you do is sometimes hard to quantify, quite truthfully. I trust the process, you trust the process, we know the benefits, but it is hard to sometimes in our lifetime with a client to be able to prove that ROI. So I am just over the moon happy.
Yeah. Well, and it's a testament. I love that. It's a great win because, like you said, it's a win-win, because it's a testament to how you show up as a leader of what you do and what you have to offer in terms of value, so that your clients see that so powerfully that they then feel confident and inspired to invest and to put that time in, because it doesn't work if they're not willing to put in the effort. And I think that's one of the things, and it's a, kind of an overused expression perhaps, but the whole, taking the horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
True.
I'm constantly reminding my clients, look, this is ultimately your work. I'm here to facilitate. I'm here to guide. I'm here to mirror and to challenge where necessary. But at the end of the day, you're the one who gets to put the work in, and you're going to get the results.
I think you are on the money completely. This is not something that I'm magically doing in my office and you're off golfing. We're doing this together. I'm facilitating, I'm mentoring, I'm supporting, I'm co-visualizing. I'm really I use the analogy of like panning for gold sometimes, that, you are the river, you are the muddy, silty riverbed, and I'm going through it and I'm trying to help you find those glimmers of gold, but it's ultimately your river, it's your stuff. And we just got to filter out the muckety muck so that we can see those glimmers of gold. And then I help surface that and amplify that. And again, ultimately it's them, but without their participation, I can't do my work.
Yeah, I love that visual. I'm just going to put it out there. I might be borrowing that because I love that. I love that visual. It's great because I think that's in my own area of expertise. That's what I do as well. I mean, I love the visual because it really is. This isn't me providing anything. And I always tell my clients this anyway. You have everything that you need to be successful. Everything. I'm not going to give you something new that's going to make you a better version of yourself. You're already that. What we're just going to do is we're just going to move some things out of the way,
Yeah.
and move some things out of the way is really like sort of
Yeah.
let's sift through and let's get the things that we don't need are going to fall through.
It's so true. I don't know where I discovered that analogy. I found it years and years ago, actually, when I was working in corporate, because I came to a very established multinational company as their creative director, and I had to make sense of all. I mean, we had storefronts, we had 1,200 stores, and I had to make sense of all of the details and make it better. But there's logistics, there's infrastructure, there's things that have been, they've already spent money on shelves and displays. We can't just throw all that away. There's a practical side to it too. So how do we keep what serves the business and maintain it and keep that as a foundation? But what else can we work with? What has been forgotten? What might be elevated? And again, it's all there. We're not the smart ones. We're just helping to showcase to them what they already know. Like you
Yeah,
said, it's
yeah,
very similar, you and I.
yeah. It makes me think back to my my Harvard days too, where I would be in meetings and I was that guy. I said, look, Harvard was here well before me. It's going to be here long after me. You guys, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but
Right.
I am coming in with a different lens and a different perspective. And I'm using your metaphor here. I want to just sort of sift through everything that you all have been doing for now hundreds of years, but that age old, well, that's the way we've always done it, was people used to love saying that at Harvard. And I would say, okay, great, but let's now sift through and figure out what stays, what goes, what actually is of most value, and then let's leverage that. So I love that you're able to do that, for your clients.
That saying of "this is how we've always done things" does not work for me.
No.
That is one of the things that I was going to talk about. If you choose to ask me about my leadership style, that is one thing that I reject pretty much wholeheartedly. I think there's benefit to exploring that, and again, seeing what works and what hasn't worked, but never coast, never take any of that for granted, that is the way that we should continue.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's what ultimately set me apart from all my other colleagues, because I didn't subscribe to that either. And was just, I'd roll my eyes or I'd laugh or I'd, sort of casually pat someone on the head and say, okay, that's cute, but we don't really want to proceed with that mindset. And fortunately, the people who I end up working with, most of them come to me because they've already answered that question. Okay, this is how I've always done it. It's not working. Time to have a conversation with somebody else. But if anyone ever comes to me with that mindset, I'm like you. I don't subscribe to that because that's what's kind of got us to where we are now, right?
Agreed.
Before we get into your journey, and I'm excited to hear what twists and turns you've encountered and enjoyed and experienced to get you to where you are now. I want to go back to the reference you made of the person who, may assume that you're in your office doing all the work yourself and they can be out there on the golf course. If and when you've ever encountered a client like that, how has that conversation gone to where you can get them to feel more bought into the process?
I've been successful most of the time. I was unsuccessful one time, and we did split ways because I said, I am not a magician, I'm a strategist, and I am here to take you from, in this case, it was a multi-generational business, to take it from one core generation to the next. And it was the senior member of the organization, and he wasn't quite ready to disperse visionary, he wasn't quite ready to empower the next generation, but he was trying to prepare it for
Mm,
them.
mm,
And so he was still very much in the weeds, but yet had absolutely no interest to build systems and be able to even just clear time on his calendar. He wasn't interested to meet in person. He wasn't interested to meet on Zoom. There were just all of these limitations. And I said, I don't think you're ready to work with me yet. He had given me a retainer. He had given me, funds. I returned the funds. And I said, I'm here. I'm happy to help either now or in the future, but at this time, you are not ready to work with me, and that's okay. And so, we did try, I tried, but since that time, this was before COVID, since that time, I've been so specific about my client expectations as well as what you can expect from me. Typically, I've been very upfront about what you can expect from me, but now I am, this is what I expect from you. And this is the time it's going to take, and it will take time away from your other duties, so that if you as a business owner aren't able to let go of other duties, is there someone else in your organization who you can empower to be more of the person on the ground? And then you will, be a person to check in with. But I need someone who can devote those hours to the upfront piece. Once we get going, I'm certainly more self-sufficient, but in that upfront piece, that's a you thing, not a me thing.
Yeah.
So you need to clear time. And I also offer options of crawling, walking, or running towards a goal. And if someone is upfront about, hey, I am not looking to speed to this, I'm looking to crawl, okay, I can work with you. I had someone yesterday who said, we got to run because I am 71. I have 5 more years in my business, and I want to milk this business for everything it's worth, and I don't want to sell it. And it was just like, okay, I like your clarity. We can do that. And so we are in a high training mode where we are training, and he has a sprint to the 5-year mark.
Wow.
Which is very different.
Yeah, there's so much power in that too. I mean, I think we talk about this in leadership trainings that I do. Clarity is kind, and people really struggle. And look, admittedly, I did in my early years as well, sort of setting those clear expectations of what I would provide, what they would provide, what the expectations were from both sides. And you could feel it, being a bit loosey-goosey. And when I was a lot more clear on what I expected from them and what the expectations would be in terms of their level of engagement and participation, the engagement's transformed. I mean, it was night and day. And I just felt so much more secure in what I could offer, how they were going to show up, what the level of, presence and participation were going to be. It's a great takeaway.
And what I also liked about that call was initially he'd come to me about renaming because he had changed location from the Northeast down to Florida, actually. And his name was very geo-specific, and he was asking me about if that would turn people away in the Florida market. And so that was the initial kind of touch point. But then once it became clear that he only had 5 years, he already has a great brand. It's not geo related to his current location. But I said, hey, we can work with anything. It's just about how you tell the story. And that is marketing. And he was like, oh, marketing. Okay. And so I said, you don't have time for a rebrand. You don't have time for a refresh, because that takes more time to communicate why we're doing that. And I said, let's just go. Let's go. Market the F out of this thing and tell the story about why you now are in New England and in Florida and actually everywhere else, because he is not bound by geography. I said, why are we even talking about geography?
Right.
This you do work in Europe, you do work in Asia, you do work in every state in the union. So let's not even talk about that. And I think that honesty from me really helped him trust me, because I wasn't just trying to sell him something that I do most of that is my most common deliverable, is a brand refresh. And I don't think you need that. Let's just market this. And he said, oh my God, I didn't know I needed that.
What a relief too. I mean, for someone who probably isn't able to have that conversation with many people, and to feel burdened probably by that question and that concern, to then have that conversation so honestly and have that sense of relief of, oh, okay, I can just sort of take this off my plate, or I can take this option off the table. Now we can actually focus on really doubling down on how do we build this in the next 5 years. That's great.
I think honesty is so important. And if you are leaving money on the table as a business owner, myself, if you are saying you don't need some of the things that I offer, I just think that is so important. I was at the vet last week with my daughter's new cat who needed a spay. And, I know nothing about veterinary services. There's all these things. Do you want this cancer screening, leukemia, all this stuff. And I just looked at the lady. I said, tell me what I need and tell me what I don't need. And she said, you don't need this, this, and this, but you do definitely need these other three. And I was like, I'm moving my dog over to you guys because I appreciate that answer, because people are just come off as very selfish and money grubbing nowadays.
Yeah.
I don't always have that feeling of authentic trust when I'm dealing with folks.
Yeah.
In any environment, you walk into a store, it's like, well, if you buy 3 more of those things that you barely need, then you can get, $10 off.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I actually need 3 more. I don't need 3 more.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people are feeling squeezed, and we could go easily off into another tangent, but that financial worry and heightened awareness around, and this goes back to the question of ROI, what am I getting for what I'm investing? If they feel like you're trying to squeeze every little penny out of them, then they don't feel like you're really there to serve. And that's why it's not selling for me, it's serving. Well, what would work best for you? What would work best for you? Oh, I don't think you need all that. I think what you're telling me, it sounds like this might be the best approach. How does that feel? Oh, that feels a lot better. And I love that. And the honesty is absolutely paramount for me as well. So as you think about the past events and experiences you've had that's led you to doing what you're doing now, tell us a little bit about your story. I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Oh gosh. Well, June is my 23rd year as a business owner. So I'm very proud of that. That's sort of my marathon. And I was a reluctant entrepreneur, actually. I had a very happy gig. I was a creative director of Borders Books in the Midwest. And my ex-husband had a really sour time in the Midwest. We were only there for 2 years. We moved there for his job. So he moved us to New England, and I had a 14-week-old baby, no job, and 2 mortgages. So I said, hey, I'm creative. Why don't I start my own thing in an area that I know no one in? That sounds like a really good idea. So interestingly and happily, I started with 3 clients. One was a very big company. It was Biogen, actually. And the other one was like a small hair salon, multi-location hair salon spa. And then the third was actually a pharmaceutical. Long story short, I had 3 projects, and then that grew. I started it in one of the bedrooms of my house. I had an au pair at the time that helped take care of my child while I could work. And I just went to town. And what prepared me for that was I had worked in big agencies in New York. I had also worked client side, as I mentioned, in Borders Books. So I really had a sense of both structures. I felt like I really understood my clients for the first time since I had worked at Borders, but then I had that very large agency model. But if you're familiar with agencies, it's sort of like a big law firm. I mean, we still end up working very independently. So I was a big agency girl working on her own in her in her house. So I have just kept that model actually for 23 years. I'm a consultant. I've been working for myself by myself for 23 years. And yet I still create that agency framework where I will hire or quote unquote pull in specialists as needed, just like in an agency. So that's why I call myself Agency Bel, not just Laura Sauter creative or whatnot. So I love it. I wouldn't ever change it. For 11 of the 23 years, I was a professor as well. So I was a part-time professor 1 day a week. And that really felt to me kind of like that socialization that I really needed in terms of getting out there, hearing from young minds who always ask the one question you don't know the answer to. And that really helped me also have a body of freelancers that could support my business because I had the pick of the litter. I knew out of the 700 students I'd had who was the best and what they were good at. So that was a really positive thing. I'm glad to have that 1 day a week back. I haven't taught for maybe 8 years or so, but that was a really nice piece of my business portfolio, if you will. And What else? I think also being active on boards. I've always been a board member. I'm currently not a board member for the last year. I rolled off of two, one national, one local. And that also has created that sense of team that I don't have working for myself by myself. So I really love what are we building here? Because I always loved that when I was in corporate. I always loved that when I was on the agency side. And I love building things.
Yeah. What a great story, and the trajectory of that to be celebrating your 23rd year. So what, Laura, kept you motivated this entire time to continue doing what you do and to grow your business?
So why work for myself versus
Yeah.
someone else?
Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, why work for yourself? That's one question. I like that. It's a great question. But also, what keeps you getting up and energized and motivated and committed to this pursuit?
That's a great question. I'm a very mindful person and I'm constantly checking in. So as we mentioned earlier, I don't do things because I've always done things that way. I have many times considered leaving my business and working for someone else. And there's benefits to that. And there's always pros and cons. And there's always that kind of, where are we in that scenario? Because I get super juiced up building things, but I'm still building things. I am not building things at the scale that I did when I was part of a big New York City agency or a multi-million dollar corporation. But one of the things I didn't love about working for the big agencies was I would spend 9 months on a project that would go nowhere because the company would get sold out from under them. I literally watched one of my favorite clients. I woke up on and looked at the I forget what it was called in the day, but I woke up to the news channel, the business news channel, and I saw my client on the day that we were supposed to launch this giant, giant,
Mm,
giant, giant rebrand that they had been sold to their competitor. And I saw it on the news and it was like, wah, wah, wah. And I can say with confidence that I change business lives because I am working with companies who are really not in that limelight like these. I worked, the company was a competitor of GE Capital and GE Capital bought them. So, I mean, these are such big companies and the work I did was so important, but if it never gets seen, why?
mm.
And and yes, of course, Wilmington Trust and other big companies, I did their logos, but I think I'm really at a place where I can really affect change for businesses at the level that I'm at right now. And that to me is what makes me wake up.
Yeah. Sounds like that ability to have regular impact really drives you.
It really does, because why do it? I mean, I was a good designer then. I'm still a good designer now. I was smart then. I'm still smart now. But if it never actually goes anywhere, why?
Mm,
And again, I'm very proud of the work I did in the past, but I feel like seeing those problems that I'm solving actually be put into play. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the call, hearing that impact that the work we did together, which seemingly has nothing to do with the ROI of his business, he was able to sell his business in a completely different level of transaction because we had elevated him so completely to a different place that this larger fish bought him. So I just feel connected to my clients and
mm.
connected to their success because we are really able to implement and carry forth those strategic works that we are creating out into their world.
Yeah. And one of the things I love is actually what you shared, which is near and dear to my heart, is the mindfulness piece of this. It's the awareness, it's the regular check-ins, because I think a lot of us, it's so easy to get wrapped up in the action-oriented processes that are associated with building a brand or building a business or paying the bills or whatever the motivation, sort of topically might be. But
Right.
actually to do the quieter check-in, like, where am I today? How am I feeling about my business? How am I feeling about the direction that things are going? And I'm encouraged to hear, still relatively new. I'm not by any means near the 23-year mark, So to hear that there were instances where you were even contemplating the return to the more traditional work or to being an employee,
Right.
that it's natural to have those feelings. And I think anybody who's listening might find some relief in hearing, oh, okay, so that's not so terrible when I have those thoughts. And, there are those tough days or those tough moments. And I think it's actually, those are the moments to do exactly what you said, which is check in, do a little self audit. You'll
Yeah.
actually find that that's a very natural feeling, and you're still deeply committed and deeply connected to the work that you do. Or maybe that's not there as much as it was in the past, and there is a different path to explore. But you won't know that unless you do the exploration, the reflection that you're talking about.
It's not always fun, as we know, to go inward, but I think it's so important, and it's also important for our clients to do that. I know that you are a coach. I'm not a coach, but I end up becoming coach-like in that, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
I still ask that question of a 60-year-old, of a 50-year-old, a whatnot-year-old, because they still have hopes and dreams too,
Mm.
even though they've been doing it forever. What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want your business to be when it grows up? And I'm not, and maybe beyond your lifetime, what do you want your business to be after you're gone? What is the legacy that you would feel most proud of? What are the milestones that we would have to get, accomplished for you to succeed in that vision? So it becomes coach-like too, in that I'm looking forward. Brand building isn't about today. I'm not saying I don't care about today, but ultimately 5 to 10 years out, where do you want to be? And that's how I got to this great aha with the business owner from yesterday. Where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years? He's like, not 10, 5. I was like, great. Okay, 5. I was like, and when you sell it, not going to sell it. Okay, great. So we have 5 years and we have a clear goal, and we just took a few things off of our list. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that person could answer those questions or respond to those qualifying questions so quickly, so confidently, because clearly they had been thinking about this themselves.
right.
And I think when I find myself in conversation with prospective clients, a lot of the initial conversations are around questions they just haven't answered.
Mhm.
And I have to remind myself this. I mean, the self coaching that I do for myself and with my own coaches, it's about the questions that come up for us in the day, or that come up for us, through the various seasons of our lives or our business, growth, to actually stop, hear the question, and then take the time to answer it. Because there's so much value in actually sitting and thinking about honest answers to those questions. How am I feeling today? Why is this affecting me so much? I keep running into the same problem. Why is that? What do I
Yeah.
want to see in the next 5 years? What do I want to see in the next 10 years? You know what? Actually, not 10 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think this is such a great takeaway in my mind, because I was having this conversation the other day with a networking group that you and I are also a part of. And I was referencing this results triangle. And of course, at the top of the triangle is results. And then it's all these things that impact our results: action, mindset, values, opinions, belief, values and priorities. And at the very, very bottom, I leave the space blank, and I always ask the question, so what do you think this bottom section of the triangle is? And everyone starts offering up, oh, it's identity, it's legacy, it's purpose. And I said, it's actually space. It's
Mm.
just space. And before we can create any of these things that then impact our results or influence our results, we need to create space, time and space, self-awareness, reflection, sort of that pure consciousness where we're able to say, let's do a little check-in. How am I feeling today? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? Am I doing more of the things that don't feel good lately? Or am I doing a lot more of the things that actually get me up in the morning, make me feel motivated, inspire me? How can I do more of that? And those questions that we all naturally have throughout the day don't get answered a lot of the times. And then we find ourselves blinking and 5 years go by and we're wondering, why do I have this like head full of unanswered questions? And that's where they find themselves either talking to a professional like you or a professional like me
That's
and
brilliant.
saying, I need I need these questions answered. And I'm saying, I don't necessarily have the answers for you. The answers are all in there. Let's just
Yeah.
move some stuff out of the way and let's just start answering them one by one.
There's a saying that was shared with me years ago that has really impacted me. it's the space between the notes that makes the music.
Mm,
Isn't that brilliant?
yeah.
Like that's all we need is like that time to make, if it's just note, 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 you don't have the music. You need the
Yeah.
space
Yeah.
between the notes. I love it. Ah,
Yeah. And as a songwriter and musician, I can really appreciate that because there have been many instances where I've been writing songs and I'll then finish, play it for myself and think to myself, that is just a jumbled mess. And what I do actually is I just stretch it out.
ah,
And this comes up a lot for when I'm doing leadership trainings, because in a one-on-one conversation similar to this or with a client, it flows. It's a tennis match, hit the ball, hit it back, hit the ball, hit it back. It's the exchange. It's beautiful. But in a group setting, when you're doing leadership training, we always talk about it, me and my other, co-facilitators, let it breathe. Give some value and then let it breathe. Let it just sit out there. Give some space. Let people process, let people think, see what comes up for them, then engage them and see. It's going to be a lot different than if you just jam it all down their throats. And I think that's true in any scenario, but certainly when I'm talking about, which is what I focus a lot on, is self-leadership, and what you're talking about, which is, this, where are we going from
mhm.
here? A lot of times people just want to pack it all in. And I think it's amazing that they get to have a conversation with you where you're like, all right, we can dump it all out on the table, but then let's sort of sift through and make some sense of everything that we're working with here.
Right. Good stuff all the way.
Yeah. So as you think about now in the year 23 and where you want to take your business, is there anything that you've learned along the way that you are conscious of wanting to do more of or less of or differently or better, quote unquote?
That's a great question. So you mentioned the networking group that we're in, and when I joined it 8 months ago, I asked myself, why do this thing? What do I want out of it? And so some of your question is reflected in some of that self-evaluation that I went through. And I would say that there is a part of me that wants a partner in my business. And so one of my wish list items for the future is to find that compatible, like-minded person who I can grow my business with.
Hmm.
And maybe it's someone younger who will, take it on over, after me, or maybe two of us will just go out with a bang when we retire. But I think I'm ready to build it, not necessarily into a full agency, but in the old agency model of words and pictures, maybe build a person who's more of the word person and I'm more of the visual person, but we both have strategy in common. So I think that that's part of my growth plan, is to start to share the love a little bit
Hmm.
with a partner.
Oh, how
And I
exciting.
don't I don't mean a romantic partner because I have one of those.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, and it will still be intimate in its own way, I'm sure. But
Of
but
course.
I love that as a goal. And I think it's clearly dovetails very nicely with the learning and growth that you've enjoyed,
Yeah.
in your business, but also personally. Because I think a lot of people, and I do a lot of co-founder coaching, when I'm coaching co-founders, there's a lot of not sure why we got into this together. We're very different people. We want very different things. And we end up finding some commonality and some common ground so that we can move things forward in a productive, positive way. But to hear that from someone, you realize, wow, you guys didn't sort of do your due diligence, not
Right.
necessarily on the other person. Yes, that's a part of it, but on yourself, to check
Exactly.
in and think about what is it that you need? What is it that you want? What is it that you're trying to create in this partnership? So the fact that you've already put in a lot of that work, which it sounds like, now puts you in a position where you can start thinking about this in a really exciting way.
Yeah. And I think it's not a have to, but a want to, which is very different than how a lot of people go into it.
Hmm.
Maybe, in other non-consultatory style businesses, we need funding, we need this. And there's obviously the tasks that would be different, but mine, it's a want, it's a wish, not a need.
Yeah.
And I think if I fall onto that person, it'll be super clear. Um, and we'll just go with it. And it doesn't matter where they're located.
Yeah. I think want to, and the phrase I tend to use a lot when I swap out need or should or ought to, all those is get to. I get
Yeah,
to.
get to,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I
I
get to do
think,
this. This is an exciting thing.
yeah, I think it will enrich my offering, and it will enrich my own life. And I'm at a place where I'm starting to go into empty nesthood, and there's a lot of intentionality about, like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I have a fiance, and we're talking a lot about where are we going to live and how are we going to live, because all the shoulds are out. Like, I live here in Milton because it's a great school system and it's close to Boston.
Hmm.
I'm doing all these things because they're the right things to do. Throw all that out. What do I get to do next?
Mm-hmm.
So exciting,
It is. It is. It is. I love that you're present to that too, because like I said, it's easy for all of us to just kind of get caught up in the right and wrong things to do, the things we should do or ought to do because of, various real needs at various seasons in our lives. But the takeaway for me in this conversation is really this idea of like these regular check-ins. And as our businesses evolve, as our lives evolves, and we find ourselves in these different seasons, to actually see like, all right, what's serving me, what's not serving me, how have my desires or my wish list evolved? And then that get to list ends up being, a lot of the things that really inspire and excite you in a new way at this new point in your life or your business. So
Oh,
how cool. That's really
so,
great.
so cool.
So I'd love just so that people who are listening, and you've shared a lot of leadership insight here in terms of ways to slow down and ways to be really intentional and mindful about how you show up in your business and how you make choices about where you're going to go in terms of your life, even geographically, but also with the way and direction that you've taken your business. What is a leadership skill or attribute that you think listeners ought to focus on if they want to become better leaders?
Great question. I did think about it. I have a few. The first one was, I think, really simple, which was being a good listener. But I'm gonna walk you through three things that I came up with. So I
Please.
think first one is that I do spend a lot of time thinking about what's needed and how I can be of service to the team. So just really being in that reflective place of how can I be of service? That is the first thing. And then the second thing is I have a bias into going into action, which means I'm not afraid of taking risks or being wrong sometimes. And I think not having that fear of being wrong is a really great thing that I have. And then the third thing is I do like standing outside from the crowd, and I don't want to be just like any old, regular member of the team. And I don't mind being in a leadership role. So I think it's the three things. Like, I really think through it. I don't mind taking action, even if it's not always popular. And I don't mind doing the work of being a leader. I don't mind standing out. Those three things.
Yeah, those are three great things. I think servant leadership is just so undervalued. I mean, we hear that phrase a lot, and people have their reactions to that. And a lot of leaders who I've been in conversation with, if they don't subscribe to that, then they really sort of rub up against it in a way where I don't have time to do that. That sounds a
Yeah.
lot like babysitting to me. And I said, no, that's actually your role as a leader in a lot of ways, is to serve those who are working for you or working with you so that you can provide them with the resources to be their best selves and then to get the best out of everybody and obviously work towards this common goal. So I love that. The other thing too, which I think is so important, is this taking action. I mean, I reflect on this constantly, and clients will come to me and they'll say, I'm just overthinking this. I'm overthinking this. And I was like, look, thinking is really important. You want to be mindful. You want to be intentional. You want to be strategic, all those things. But if you find yourself overthinking to the point where it's creating inaction, the best remedy for overthinking is actually action.
Right.
Put yourself in action. Don't worry. It's a sort of messy versus right
Yeah.
mentality. It's okay. You're not going to get it perfectly right. You may not get it completely quote unquote wrong, but there's going to be
Right.
so much learning from that. And I reference the book all the time by Ryan Holiday, the sort of obstacle is the way. As a business owner, every time I run into a challenge or an obstacle, I immediately think to myself, ooh, I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm going to learn something from this. I know that on the other side of that is gold, and that there's going to be something really exciting to be created from this obstacle or this challenge.
And another book for your listeners is The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins.
Mm.
So, I mean, I there's probably less of the thinking and more of the doing, but don't be afraid to take action. Just get it done, move it forward, move that ball forward. If we're just thinking about, oh, I really would love to move this rock up the mountain, how, and and should we, get it up there. Let's
Mm,
go.
yeah. And it's natural. I mean, I think a lot of us really fixate on the how. And
Right.
especially as a relatively new business owner, it comes up for me a lot. How about this? And how am I going to do this? And how am I going to create that? And how will I get this? And when you realize, when you drop the how and you focus much more on the what or the why, more importantly, you realize, okay, the how will figure itself out. I'll figure out the how. But if I put myself in action, that will be revealed.
Right.
And I think that's such an important message for people to really sink into, is the being in action is actually what keeps you being able to then reaffirm that you're on the right path. Because if you don't take action, then you're just standing still and you don't know whether or not actually the direction you're headed is the one you want to ultimately go to.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I think the doing the work, putting in the work, your willingness to actually show up as a leader. And again, a lot of the clients I work with are leaders of their businesses, leaders of big teams. And there are many clients I work with who aren't leading anybody in particular, but they are leaders in their community. They're leaders of themselves, they're leaders of their families.
Mhm.
And it still requires that you show up and that you put in the work. And if there's a hesitancy around what leadership means to you, that's why I always have my clients define what leadership means to them.
Mm.
If there's a hesitancy about what leadership even means, or what that looks like for you, or what your style or philosophy is around that, then you're going to be caught in this sort of, analysis paralysis, where you're not going to then end up doing the work and showing up as a leader that you're meant to be, because you're fixated on, well, what is that going to say about me? Or will I do it right? Just get out there and do it. Put the work in.
And I like, that you mentioned the kind of array of clients that you touch. So as another example, I have a 20-year-old who is working a retail job. She's a brand new associate, and she is already being identified as a leader in her little retail job, making whatever, $16 an hour. And she took the time and went to a leadership conference on Friday, and again, with other youth, but it's just like she wants to step into leadership. She's seeing her value as a leader just in these, kind of smaller jobs that, that no one thinks about. Oh my gosh, wow, she is, and she's like, oh, it's just this, it's just that. No, you are directly interfacing with clients. You are so good at that. You are so good at connection. You're so good at seeing the opportunities that need to be fulfilled in the back room, or making a display better. You're taking action without being told what to do and how to do it. You're motivating the other staff members who don't know how to do that. Oh my gosh, I can name a million other things in just that one little sentence that you just shared. And she's like, really? Me? What? And I just love it. Leadership is all around us. It can be.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And I will say that again, leadership is all around us, because I say that all the time. And I think it's so important for people to remember that, because if people are thinking that leadership is just a hat that they take on and off,
Right.
it really is so much more than that. And I love the fact that you called that out. I was reading a book, and a line from the book was, she was saying something along the lines of, whether you're the gum scraper at the local bowling alley, or whatever job it is you have, be the best damn gum scraper you can be. Because, and this is my essence of what I do too, is leadership's a way of being.
Mm-hmm.
For me, leadership is not 10 rules and responsibilities of what a leader ought to be. Leadership is a state of mind. Leadership is something that you really embody. And to your point, you can be doing sort of a junior role early on in your career, and it seems so insignificant at the time, but how you show up and how you promote yourself and how you feel into yourself as a leader is going to end up paying off, in dividends down the road.
And look at all of the touch points. I'm especially aware of it since COVID. Like, I don't do the things just like I used to, of going to the restaurants or going to the stores. When I go, it's special. Like, I want to feel special. I want to
Mm,
feel treated right, or have my problem solved. And I don't have that experience from many associates out there in the general workforce, that they
yeah,
really care about me, or
yeah,
they're really taking their job seriously. They're not valuing themselves even, probably.
yeah,
And so the experience oftentimes is quite negative and underwhelming, because no one has taken the stance of leadership in their role, whether it be a server or an associate in a retail or whatnot. And I think it's important to remember that for anyone listening, that leadership isn't just the boss at the top. It's all of us.
That's right. Yeah, that's why self-leadership is so important to me. And that's what I drill home. We're going to get to the technical, tactical skills of leadership at some point in our conversations, but it starts with you. It starts with self-leadership. And I still remember getting my master's degree and moving out to Las Vegas and, working at an Outback in Las Vegas after having gotten my master's degree. And everyone there was, they were sort of lifelong restaurant professionals and they were thriving out there in Las Vegas, which is a scene in itself. And they were saying, you've got a master's degree, you speak multiple languages. What are you doing living in Las Vegas, working in restaurants? I said, well, I don't want to start my career yet. I want to have fun. And I just want to kill it. I want to be the best damn server out here that I can be. I want to be the best bartender, and I want to have fun, and I want to be memorable, and I want to create an experience and have impact. And that was what I wanted to do because that's what I was doing in that moment. And that has served me so well throughout my career in a variety of industries that I've worked, and especially what I do now. But I think it's just such a great takeaway to think about, where are we in our lives? Where are we in our days? And where are we choosing to take ownership and agency of how we make, whatever it is that we're doing, a leadership opportunity, a growth opportunity, a learning opportunity. So thank you. Thank you for calling that out and presencing me and listeners with that, because I think that's such a great one. I want to give you a chance just to share a little bit about where people can find out more about you and the work you do and engage with you.
Oh, wonderful. The best place is my website. That's the easiest place. It's www.agencybel1l.com. And there's obviously a way to connect with me there. There's a button that says connect with Laura, and that's the easiest way. Or LinkedIn. I love connecting with folks on LinkedIn, but agencybel.com is the easiest way.
Fantastic. And I'll put all that in the show notes too. So anyone listening who, if they want to go check that out, I'll put the links in there so that those are easily accessible. Laura, thank you so much for the time today. I have really enjoyed this conversation and gotten to learn more about you and your journey and the way that you serve your clients and the way that you show up in the world. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Be well.
Thank you so much. As always, I'd love to hear from you about the episode. What came up for you as you think about leveling up your leadership game? And please, if you enjoyed the episode, I encourage you to like and subscribe. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Hakeem A. Lakhdar or at lakhdarcoaching.com. Thanks for tuning in. Keep being great, and we'll see you next time.